Hi everyone, welcome to your first video of semester 2. This is 3.1. Today our objective is that we are going to be talking about our new book, While the Locust Slept, and we're going to be understanding the historical context and the setting of the book a little bit more. So the goal of this video is for us to talk about what is this book, While the Locust Slept, by Peter Raiser, and why are we reading it in English 10? So let's talk a little bit about the basics of this book. It's called While the Locust Slept. We're going to be talking a little bit more about this title as we go on, because you might be wondering, what the heck is a locust? Why is it sleeping? What does it have to do with this story? We are going to answer those questions. And the genre of this book is memoir or autobiography. This means that the author of the book, Peter Raiser, is actually writing his own story and telling us the truth about what happened in his life. The publisher of this book is the Minnesota Historical Society, and it was actually published not too long ago in 2001. And so you'll see that this book is pretty recent, and it's also set in Minnesota, and so it has a lot of modern relevance to our lives as Minnesotans as well, which I think is really cool. So let's talk a little bit more about our author. His full name is James Peter Raiser, but he goes by Peter Raiser. He lived from 1928 until 2022, so he just passed kind of recently. He was a first-time author at the age of 72. So he had not written any books before he wrote this book when he was 72 years old, which I think is pretty incredible. And Peter Raiser is a member of the Fond du Lac Band of Minnesota Chippewa or Anishinaabe Ojibwe people. So this means that Peter Raiser is a Native American in Minnesota. This book is set in our state of Minnesota, and I wanted to show you this map so that we kind of have a visual of where the book takes place. This is the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Reservation, where Peter Raiser's family is from. But Peter Raiser was actually born down here in St. Paul, which is not too far from us. And the book also takes place in some other parts of Minnesota, like Owatonna, and Rushford, and Houston, and Caledonia, and Superior. So like I said, Peter Raiser was born in St. Paul, which is actually where I grew up as well. And he was a ward of the state, which basically means that his family could not take care of him when he was a baby. And so essentially he grew up like an orphan. And so he was raised at a state school in Owatonna from the ages of 1 to 15. When he was 15, the school or orphanage that he was living in sent him to work on a farm placement, which means that he went to live with a family that had a farm, and he would help out with farm work and theoretically kind of like be a part of their family. So as I've been talking in this video, you've heard me use a couple words that you might be familiar with, but you might not be familiar with. And they are Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, and Chippewa. So these three words, they kind of are words for the same group of people, but they come from different places. So Anishinaabe means the original people of this earth, and it is a term for the Native American communities here in Minnesota. And this was the term that the groups of people actually gave to themselves. And then when settlers from European countries came to the United States, they gave these names to that group of people, Ojibwe and Chippewa. So some people prefer one term over the other, but I think we're going to see all three of these used interchangeably in our book. And so I just wanted you to know that they all kind of refer to the same group of people. And Peter Raiser is part of this specific group, the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. All right, so as Peter Raiser was growing up when he was a young person, he was kind of told by the state school that he grew up in that being a Native American was not a thing he should be proud of, and that it was not a good or beautiful culture. But as he grew up and got older, he started studying his heritage and his culture, And he learned that it actually was very beautiful and something that he was really proud of. And so he said, I studied Indian culture, my roots, and contrary to what I heard as a child, I found it really beautiful. So one of his sources was this book, Chippewa Customs, that taught him a lot about his cultural heritage. And he was also able to learn from some tribal elders in his community. And he actually learned that his grandmother had been a very famous and prolific beadwork artist. So as an older adult, he started connecting with his Native American culture more. So you might be wondering why Peter Raiser felt separated from his culture as a young child. And part of this is related to the really violent and racist history our country has of Indian boarding schools. You might have heard of this, you might not have, but essentially this was something that was going on in the United States from 1879 to 1970s, so not even that long ago, where the US government was taking Native children from their families and from their homes and putting them into boarding schools with really the goal of cutting them off from their heritage and culture and trying to make them be more like white people. So the goal of these schools, what people actually said, was kill the Indian and save the man or the child. This was first said by Captain Richard H. Pratt in 1879, and he actually worked at the Carlisle Industrial School, one of these Indian boarding schools, which really the US government said that the duty was to Americanize Native children, or really take away their Native culture and turn them into fitting in with white people, white Americans. And so although Peter Raiser, the author, didn't grow up in one of these Indian boarding schools, he was in a state-run public boarding school that had a lot of these same kind of racist ideas that they wanted to really separate him from his culture and not really teach him what was beautiful and special about being Native American. We are going to be looking at 3 bigger themes as we read this book. And remember, a theme is kind of like a deeper lesson or message that we can learn as we read. The first one that we're going to be looking at is growing up in the margins. So this is essentially looking at what is it like to grow up as a young child and a young person where you feel like you're being told that you don't fit in and that you're being pushed to the side and not really treated fairly or equally. The second theme really goes along with this idea, and it is standing up to oppression. So this means when you are being treated unfairly or unequally, how do you stand up for yourself and fight back and really show that you are powerful and worthy and have a voice? And Peter Raiser really can teach us this lesson of how to stand up to injustice and oppression. The third theme we're looking at is the subjectivity of truth. That basically just means that sometimes people in power can try and twist the truth and make you think that something is true that maybe isn't true. And people really have different perspectives on what is true. So here's a couple pictures of our author as a young child and a young person. This is kind of the age he was when we are going to read his story. Here is Peter Raiser as an adult, maybe around the age he wrote this book. Now that you're done with this video, I want you to start reading chapter 1. There's audio posted on Schoology, and I really want you to enjoy this book and start getting into it. I'm so excited to hear what you think.